Gunmen opened fire in a Catholic church in Nigeria, killing dozens of worshippers during Sunday Mass. That's according to a doctor who told Reuters that no fewer than 50 bodies were recovered from St. Francis Church in the town of Owo in Nigeria's southwest Ondo state. Local media outlets reported the gunmen also detonated explosives and that the victims included women and children. The identity and motive of the attackers were not immediately clear. President Muhammadu Buhari condemned the attack, calling it heinous, while the Vatican said Pope Francis was praying for the victims. Africa's most populous country is battling an Islamist insurgency in the northeast, where armed gangs have reportedly carried out attacks and kidnappings for ransom. However, similar incidents in the southwest, such as Sunday's attack, are considered rare.
Shalom, Kahala Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yamshai, Ba'Shem Rakokwadash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles, the announcers of the great millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, where the house of David be born again in this generation. And shalom to the one-third of Yasharala, who today are known as Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about this mass judgment that took place in Nigeria, where 50 Israelites were slaughtered by the wrath of God. Yes, they were killed by Islamist insurgents, right? But the reason why it was the insurgents who killed these Israelites, why they were in church nonetheless, is because this is the judgment of the Lord, which we'll get into in just a bit. But before I get into that, I want to go ahead and establish that the so-called Negroes, right, especially there in Nigeria and other West Coast countries in Africa, are not African. They, in fact, are the descendants of the tribe of Judah, right? The Judites, okay, the true Jews of the Bible, right? And why do I say that? Well, first of all, let's read this. This is from the Zondervan Bible Dictionary. Okay, so this isn't just some random, fact I, pulled out of the air. This is actually from an accredited source. It says Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years after the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. His indecency, when his father lay drunken, brought a curse upon Canaan. So, like it says here, man, Ham, who is the progenitor, the forefather of the true Africans, right? The Canaanites, the Egyptians, right? You heard all those names, right? But he is not the forefather of the Negroes. And why is that? Well, because the Negroes are the children of, or the descendants from Shem, right? And namely, they come out of the direct line of Jacob, or whose name was changed to Israel, right? Shows you right here. He was one of the sons which came from Leah, right? Jacob's first wife, right? And again, Judah, he would be the true, his descendants would be the true Jews, who today, through historical facts, archaeological evidence, and being backed up by prophecy, is the so-called Negroes, right? So again, the American Negroes that you see in America today were pulled out of the west coast of Africa, mainly during the North Atlantic slave trade, okay? But again, the slavers, right, the people who took the tribe of Judah into slavery did not manage to enslave all of them, right? There's movies, I believe it was Roots, where it showed a scene where, the Judites that were in the west coast of Africa, they were on the lookout for slavers that were basically kidnapping and enslaving them, right? And the thing is that that whole statement that Africans sold Africans into slavery is a total BS, right? The truth is that the Africans sold the Jews into slavery, and the Edomites, the so-called Caucasians, unwittingly, I'm sorry, not unwittingly, but they mistakenly enslaved them, right? Which is ultimately why the Lord is going to bring wrath upon the Caucasian race when he makes his second return. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and read, why the Judites are spread all around the world. Well, it's going to tell you right here that this, in fact, is one of the curses that are put upon not only the so-called Negro, right, the Southern Kingdom, but also the Northern Kingdom, the Latino and the Native Americans, right? Let's start off. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 64. And Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, shall scatter thee amongst all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other, and thou shalt serve other gods, right? Notice, little g, right? Which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone, right? The Christian cross or the Islamic stone of Mecca. And amongst these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai shall give thee a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, would God it were evening, or even, and at even thou shalt say, would God it were morning. For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for thy sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. And Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. And that right there is the curse that shows that us Israelites, the Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans, would not only be scattered around the entire world, but that the Lord would ultimately bring us into our captivity with ships, right? Because that's ultimately what Egypt represents: is bondage, is drawing water, right? And the thing is the Latinos, Native Americans came over here to the Americas on ships around the 600 BC, which was later followed by the so-called Negroes during the North Atlantic slave trade in the 1600s, okay? Fulfilling this prophecy. Now, that being said, like I mentioned, the majority of the so-called Negro slaves brought to the Americas were taken from the west coast of Africa. Now you may ask yourself, what were the Jews, or what were the Israelites doing in Africa? Well, you see, they were actually refugees in Africa, right? When you read, slavery materials, sale signs, you'll see signs like this, right? Now, sorry, this is a horrible, variation of this clipping, but the thing is that these devils, that they do as much as possible to hide these, or take them down from the internet. But this here is one of the original clippings from an ad for the sale of slaves from Africa. And what does it say? To be sold on board the ship Benai Island on Tuesday, the 6th of May, next at a Folly Ferry, a choice cargo of about 150 fine, healthy, fine hebos, right? What does this mean? What are hebos? Well, I'll tell you. Hebos is a broken form of English for the term Hebrews, right? Eventually, the Edomite, the the so-called Caucasian slave owner would get smart and decide to hide the identity and would just start using the term Negro or blacks, right? But ultimately, before all that took place, they were being referred to as Hebrews or Judah, right? Or other by names that that reference the true origins of the people who were being brought into slavery, right? And let's go and read this book, right? This book here is called Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph R. Windsor, right? Famous historian, right? He reads here, and mainly it's going to be this part here that we're going to read. Let's zoom in real quick. But this tells you about how the so-called Negro, right, the Judites, actually got into Africa. It says, in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter, which, by the way, you can read about this in the book of that Josephus, the Israelite historian and also priest and governor, wrote, to describe the events that took place during the Roman wars. Right? It says many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people during the period from Pompey to Julius. It has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. Right? And there you go. That's the main point, right? But again, this was also biblical, right? Here was the prophecy that the Messiah himself had warned the southern kingdom about, looking out for the signs to come and to ultimately to flee into Africa. Let's read it. This is Luke 21 and 20. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea, right, the southern kingdom, flee to the mountains, right, the mountains being the mountains in northern Africa. And let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereto. Right? So the Lord was given, warnings to the Israelites, right? The southern kingdom that was still in the land of Jerusalem, right? That when you see, basically these armies surround Jerusalem or coming basically around to skedaddle, get out of Jerusalem, right? And go into Africa, right? And anybody who is scattered around Jerusalem, don't even come into Jerusalem, right? That was the warning that the Messiah, whose true Hebrew name is Yahweh Shai, right? It's not Jesus Christ, not Joshua, Yeshua, none of that, right? It is Yahweh Shai, which is Hebrew for He is salvation, right? These are the warnings that the Lord gave them, which history has confirmed. Okay, now not only has history confirmed it, but you also have other nations who understand who the true Jews are, right? Here, in fact, is a quote from the Egyptian president. I forgot his name, but his there you go, Gamal Abdel Nasser. He says, when he was asked about peace in the Middle East, the late president of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, stated, "The Jews will never be able to live here in peace because they left here black, but came back white." Right? And what is this man talking about? He is talking about how everybody knew that the true Jews of the Bible were black skinned, dark skinned, okay? And that the people who claimed to be the Jews who returned to the land of Israel during the late 1800s and ultimately en masse after World War II and stuff, when the Balfour Declaration was announced. Let's go and get that real quick. Let's bring in the Bible timeline. So this is talking about when where is it at? Let's look at the 70 AD destruction of Jerusalem, right? Like, which is spoken about in Luke 21, in 70 AD. Rome destroys and takes over Israel, right? Namely Jerusalem, right? Here you see the menorah being taken away. And unfortunately, this image depicts all the Jews as so-called white people. But again, the Jews were in fact dark-skinned. They were black people, right? But again, they're not really black because, again, there's no such thing as black people. Well, maybe some Canaanites, man, they're purple black men. The point being is that the so-called Negro is a dark brown, right? And they come in many shades. Now, again, like we just read, from Babylon to Timbuktu, right? It tells us 1 million Israelites flee into Africa. So this is what Abdul Nasser was talking about, right? How the Israelites, or the Jews, left black, but and this is that book that I was telling you about that you will read from Josephus, that talks about the history and the wars and basically a retelling of what the Bible talks about, in his books, right? But again, later on, in about over 600 years later, you had the people, the Khazarian people, under their king, Kagan Bulan, do a mass conversion of the nation from a pagan belief into a new religion, right? The religion basically they took on the heritage of the Israelites and made it into a religion, and they referred to it as Judaism, okay? Now, ultimately what happened down the road is that the people, right, and you got to go all the way back through history, and this is why, the apostles and all the elders say, man, that if you want to understand, you got to know history to understand the history, right? Let's go here. So this is what I was talking about, right? In 1917, it says the declaration was issued by the British government during World War I, declaring the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, then an Ottoman region with a minority Jewish population. So that is ultimately what Gamal Abdel Nasser was talking about, okay? Now, there's many other things that explain that the Jews of the Bible were in fact so-called black people, okay? It says Jews are black. Jews look like Egyptians, right? Moses was mistaken for an Egyptian. Yahushua and Joseph fled into Egypt to hide from Herod, right? What would a so-called white person, how could a so-called white person hide amongst so-called black people, right? They can't. Joseph's brothers thought Joseph was an Egyptian. Simon called Niger, in Acts 13:1, right? Moses' hand became white, then black again. Moses looked like an Egyptian. Paul looked like an Egyptian. Moses was raised as an Egyptian. Right? So check that out, man. Imagine a so-called white man, being raised in a house of so-called black people, man, and saying, "Oh, this is my son." That shit doesn't fly, man. And again, there's so many more examples. But again, the point being is that the Nigerians, along with the American so-called Negro, are in fact the true Jews of the Bible. Okay, and this is ultimately in accordance with biblical prophecy and the historical and archaeological facts, man. Right? And again, the Negro, Latinos, Native Americans would be the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, back to the main point of this lesson, right? About the mass judgment which took place in Nigeria, right? These people here, they are Israelites, right? These would be, even though they're dressed in African, apparel, right? Throw some jeans and some designer shirts on these people, man, right? And some modern, sneakers, and they would all appear to be like your so-called American Negro, okay? Well, again, these Israelites were in fact judged by the Lord, right? And let's go ahead and talk about that. Right? See, the reason why these Israelites, right? Because it wasn't only these Israelites, but let's go back about a week or two. What happened in Uvalde, Texas, where you had those Latino kids, right, which are also Israelites, being killed in mass, right? Why did that happen? Well, because you see, the Lord is very upset at us, right? And namely, He is upset at the 2/3 of our people, right? 2 out of every 3 Negro, Latino, or Native Americans, and anybody whose bloodline goes back to that, or father's line goes back to that bloodline, right? And that's because we are doing things that the Lord commanded us not to do, right? In this case, over there in Nigeria, they were following, even though the article and that video said that they were, at a Catholic church, they themselves were actually listening to a Pentecostal mass, right? Which both of those are going off. See, none of those actually talk about the truth of the Bible, right? Because you see, just like this image shows, man, they were learning and following man-made religion. It doesn't matter if it's Catholicism, Pentecostalism, Mormonism, right? Christianity, right? All these isms, all these doctrines are man-made. They are not what the Bible speaks of, right? Have you ever been to a church and wondered why they don't just read out of the Bible? Well, because these churches are not set up to read out of the Bible, right? You know what these churches are set up for, right? Starting with the Vatican, right? They're there to get 501c3 tax exempt status. And why is that? Well, because that way they could get a piece of this $82.5 billion a year, right? That's how much organized religion brings in, right? And these devils, starting at the Vatican, all the way down to people like T.D. Jakes and people like Comfy, Tazadakia, Yohana, Rakah, right? All these people, right, have misled the Israelites, right? They have caused them to err, right? And what does the Lord say about that? This is Jeremiah 23:1. Woe be unto the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, saith Yahweh Bashem Shai. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh Bashem Shai, power of Israel, against the pastors that feed my people, ye have scattered my flock and driven them away, and have not visited them. Behold, I will visit upon you the evils of your doings, saith Yahweh Bashem Shai. And I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all countries, whither I have driven them, and I will bring them again to their folds, and they shall be fruitful and increase. Right? So this right here is talking about the Israelites who are waking up, the 1/3. Right? We are being brought back to our flock, right? To our brethren, the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, who are woken up to this truth, to understand that we are the Israelites. We're coming together, baby. But all these other 2/3 who are out there practicing religion, following these false pastors, what is the Lord doing? Well, it says right here, right? He's going to, what does it say? I will visit upon you the evils of your doings, right? Why do you think you're hearing about so many sexual scandals, molestations, corruptions in the churches, and also these mass judgments that took place, like what happened here in Nigeria, right? What did the Lord say? That, when judgment was going to start to come to the world. He said, let's go read it. It says, this is Ezekiel 9:4. And Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, which, remember, Jerusalem is a people before it's a place. They're just talking about the people, not the land of Jerusalem, because remember, there's many Jerusalem cities around the world, right? And set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that are done in the midst thereof, right? And this mark on the foreheads is talking about the mark of exemption from judgment, right? These are the righteous brothers and sisters who are going to be right with the Lord, right? So the Lord says, go, he's saying to the angels, go through my people, go through the Negro, Latinos, Native Americans, and anybody whose bloodline goes back to those people, and set a mark, right? Mark the righteous of my people, the 1/3, with a mark in their forehead. That mark being the name of the Most High and His only begotten Son, Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, right? Which are the true Hebrew names of the Father and the Son. But what does he say about the wicked 2/3, the ones who just ain't gonna get right? Let's read it. Verse 5. And to the others he said in mine hearing, go ye after him through the city and smite, and basically kill. Let not your eyes spare, neither have ye pity. Slay utterly old and young, right? And what was, who were the people in that church, right? There was kids and elderly in that church, man, right? The news clip said, man, that they closed off the doors and they threw bombs in there, man, and they were shooting. And not only that, but they had people stationed outside the church to get anybody who managed to escape, right? That right there is not having pity, right? And utterly slaying old and young, both maids, which are women, and little children and women. But come not near any man upon whom is the mark, right? The mark in their forehead, right? God's name, His true name, and begin at my sanctuary, right? And there you go. That's the point right there. And begin at my sanctuary, right? Because believe it or not, the Lord is judging the world right now, right? He is orchestrating his grand, plan to bring all the armies of the world into the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the Middle East, to play out prophecy of Armageddon. But at the same time, he's also lining up the judgment which he's bringing upon the world. And it begins at the house of God. Let's read this. This is 1 Peter 4:17. For the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? Right? What is it? The end of them? Well, it's this. This is what's going to happen to all you unfaithful Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans, and anybody whose bloodline goes back to that family, right? You are in for a rude awakening, man. For all those Israelites, you Negro, Latino, Native Americans who are stuck in this world, who think that you're going to be able to save yourself by your money, by your science, by following the Edomites, by following the ways of this world, when the Lord said very plainly, do not, that being a friend of this world is being an enemy to God, right? And that's ultimately what these Israelites in Nigeria found out, what it meant to be an enemy of God, right? Well, that meant that, they got to understand what the wrath of God was like, right? So, hopefully this video was edifying, Akim. I know I kind of went all over the place, but I just wanted to, touch upon this, because again, it's not really talked too much about here in Babylon the Great, as basically America doesn't give a shit about anything that happens outside of America, unless it, pushes their narrative. But again, this is biblical what happened, man. God judged these Israelites in Nigeria, and He's going to continue to judge, people, the 2/3, and to the point where people are going to start to wonder that, or start to consider, right? The scriptures say that thou shalt consider, So the thing is it's going to get so bad that people are going to be like, man, this is biblical what's going on, right? But hey, unfortunately we're not at that time, and the 2/3 just haven't realized what's going to go on, and unfortunately they're not going to, not until they see those missiles in the air, man. Then at that point they're going to realize that, hey, those crazy guys down the street preaching on the corner, saying that we were the Israelites and to repent, that they in fact were telling the truth, that they themselves were the prophets that the Lord set up to warn the Israelites, to warn the world of what was on the books to come to the world. So hopefully this video is edifying, Akim. Until the next time, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Kokodash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.